Today I'd like to do a video message on one of my favorite passages in Scripture where it says in Romans 8:28, and we know that God works all things together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And I'd like to just talk about that. Does that necessarily mean that everything that happens in life is good and that God authored it? No. Of course not. We know that sin is not a good thing, and bad things that happen, such as like the sins of others against us, are not good things. And we know our own personal sin is not a good thing. We know James says, "Let no one when tempted say, 'God is tempting me,' for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does He tempt anyone." And so we know that God is not the author of evil, but He can take evil even and recycle it into something good. When we have recycling, for example, we're told lots of times, "Oh, don't forget to recycle." That means we take something that would normally go in the trash and we take it and we send it off to a place to be recycled, and they take it, they melt it down into whatever they need to do. Oftentimes it's plastic. They'll melt it down and make it into something useful again. And so God can take the bad things, the good things, the ugly things in life, the good, the bad, the ugly, and He can take them and make them into something useful for us. We see that through the story of Joseph. For example, his brothers sold him as a slave into Egypt, and he went through all this terrible stuff before God eventually used that to prepare him to be the next great, the second highest in command in all of Egypt. And he was able to, forgive his brothers and then provide for his family, because there was a great famine in that land. And he ended up being wise and telling Pharaoh how he should go about trying to preserve the stores of grain in Egypt, so that when the 7 years of famine hit, there would be plenty of food left over to spare during that time of famine. And as a result, Joseph was able to provide for his starving family back home, who the famine hit the land of his land back where Jacob and his brothers who had sold him off were staying. And so Joseph became an instrumental part to preserve their lives and the lives of the people in Egypt too. So we see God use that. And then we also see the story of David, where David, faced a lot of unfair set of circumstances. He was hunted by Saul for all those years after all he had done to benefit Saul. And Saul ended up turning against him as his enemy, and he started trying to kill him all those years. And we see David learned a lot about becoming the next great king through what he had gone through in his life. And so whatever we're facing today, we don't have to just resolve to say, well, this is a crappy situation, I shouldn't be going through this. Well, we all will go through the necessary trials of life. James 1 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given." And so when we're going through a hard time, James encourages us to ask for wisdom from God. Lord, what are you trying to show me in this? What are you trying to prepare me for? What are you using? How are you using these bad things that are going on in my life to do something good in me and through me and with my life? And so when we submit our trials to the Lord, when we take the broken pieces of our lives that we're not necessarily pleased with, it's like shattered glass. Sometimes life gives us a bunch of shards of shattered glass. But let's suppose somebody with skill came in and took all those pieces of broken glass in our lives, the broken pieces of our lives, and then made it into this beautiful, elaborate stained glass window. That's kind of how God works. It's when we have all these broken shards of glass from the fragments of our lives, God takes it, puts it all together, fuses it together. He makes this beautiful stained glass window that His light can shine through. that His glorious light can shine through the broken pieces of our lives when we give them to Him and allow Him to take them and mold them into something useful for His glory and His kingdom and for our good. And I just encourage you today, listeners, if you're going through an unfair set of circumstances, if you're in a trying time, I encourage you to turn towards the Lord and give Him that mess that you have. Don't turn away from Him. Don't get bitter. Being bitter doesn't help anybody. Being bitter will rob us of really what God has in store for us and really His best. We got to turn to Him with our struggles and our trials and our pains and our hurts. And that's how we can truly experience His truly working together all things for our good. God bless.